Hey y'all, this is Brown at I Have Brown, and today we're going to be having another 2-for-1 special, namely 2 stories, 1 review. So the stories in question come from Marvel Comics Presents, which was an anthology comic that Marvel had that went from the late 80s and into the mid 90s. And each issue would have 4 8-page stories, and they would oftentimes highlight lesser known characters, or they would allow then new artists and or writers to get their foot in the door. But another one of the appeals of this particular format is that it would have either popular or lesser known characters in standalone stories that were wholly unconnected, oftentimes from ongoing events. So you could read the story in one go, have some fun, one and done. So the stories in question I'm going to be talking about are Kids Will Be Kids, which is a story that stars Grey Hulk, and then the other story is Heads I Win, Tails You Lose, which stars Black Widow and Silver Sable. So first up in Kids Will Be Kids, you have this group of alien kids who are going throughout the galaxy, destroying planets that are uninhabited, mind you, and asteroids for points, because for them, they've got this ongoing, the equivalent of a video game wherein you destroy asteroids and planets for major points. And so they end up in our solar system, and not having been there before, they don't realize that planet Earth is inhabited. They don't bother checking for life signs or radio signals or anything. They just assume, because of how small it is, based on their standards, that all the planets are uninhabited. And so what they decide to do is they decide to manipulate this huge asteroid into heading over on a collision course for Earth, or for the third planet, because they don't know it's the name of the place. And basically, once the asteroid hits our planet, they'll get major points in this ongoing game. But as this asteroid's making its way towards Earth, it's seen by some scientists at a military installation that happens to have an observatory. And so they calculate that they have 3 hours before the asteroid hits our planet and destroys it. And so one of the scientists calls up another one who's working on this prototype for a rocket-propelled spring-powered harness. And so, basically it's a harness that has springs on it, and that allows one to jump from one spot to another, but with the assistance of rockets. And so, while it's a device that does work, it's unfortunately only designed for ground warfare. And so, while it allows for a person to, say, go from one point to another, there's no way that this particular harness, under its own power, can go over and go up into outer space. And there's really no one within, say, the military that obviously has the leg power to do that. And on the other hand, though, there's a person who happens to be at a conference within the base who hears what's going on and says, "Hey, I think I know someone who can solve our problem." And it turns out that in this particular person's employ for this particular point in time, he has a certain Mr. Fixit on hand. And Mr. Fixit is an alias for Grey Hulk. And so Grey Hulk is definitely a character that, it's still the Hulk and everything, but it was at a point in time where, if I remember correctly, there was kind of like a nocturnal thing going on, wherein he was Bruce Banner during the day, but at night he would turn into Grey Hulk. And so this this one particular individual lets the scientists know that he can talk to Mr. Fixit and tell him what's going on, because he has the power to, get over into outer space, especially with the assistance of something that's rocket propelled, and it's on short notice. And so they approach Mr. Fixit, aka Grey Hulk, and tell him what's going on, and he's kind of like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do it," into the world and all that. And so he's able to get into the harness, and they're able to use his natural jumping ability along with the rockets and the springs on the harness to get him into outer space. But unfortunately, the contraption, because it's not meant to go beyond Earth's atmosphere, breaks apart. And so Hulk is basically just, drifting into space. And and heading towards the asteroid. And the good news is he's able to destroy the asteroid in basically one big go. But the bad news is because of the device breaking apart, he doesn't have a way to get home. But it's at that point, after the asteroid's been destroyed, that the aliens, see that someone's interrupted their game, and so they want to see, what this obstacle is that's destroyed their asteroid and interrupted their fun. And so they use a tractor beam to bring Hulk aboard the ship, and then they realize that, oh crap, this is a living thing here, and it's a very dangerous living thing. And so they have one of their security robots come out and try to take Hulk down, but he easily overpowers and destroys it. And he, looks at the aliens and starts chewing them out, saying, what the heck are you guys doing? Why are you trying to destroy Earth? And so at that point, they're basically saying, in their language, but in a way to where he can understand, probably telepathy or something. The way it's illustrated, it looks like it's telepathy, but they're sort of panicked, and they apologize profusely because they were just having fun. They were just playing the game like they usually do, and they didn't realize that the planet that they were trying to destroy was inhabited. And one of them even admits that, yeah, we just kind of forgot to check for life signs and all the excitement, and it was a genuine accident on their part. And so, Hulk sort of says, okay, the danger's over, y'all made your case, so, okay, how am I getting home? And so, the aliens, by way of further apology, they're able to scan in his mind exactly where he left Earth from, and they, head over to the spot, which is where the military installation is, and and they, once they get there, they allow Hulk to depart from the ship and then head back to, continue playing the game, but this time to make sure that their targets are either just straight up asteroids or strictly uninhabited planets, which is what they should have been doing all along. But, Hulk is kind of amused by the whole thing because on one hand, this is something that, yes, it could have destroyed Earth, but the fact that it was literally an accident, that these, aliens were literally just kids having fun, he's kind of like, yeah, kids will be kids. And so the scientists and everyone, they're kind of like, well, crisis averted. Thank you, Mr. Fixit. And so basically that's how the story ends. And so I thought this was a fun story. Once again, it's a standalone story that's wholly unconnected from ongoing events. So a reader who's not too familiar with, say, what's going on with the Hulk series can just pick up the story, read a standalone Grey Hulk story, and it's a pretty self-explanatory, fun little tale. And I thought that the artwork was pretty good. It sort of strikes the right balance between semi-realistic looking and and then a bit cartoony when it comes to, say, how the aliens are depicted and what have you. And also, I thought it was kind of amusing how they had kind of a series of coincidences going on, in the sense that, first off, there just happens to be on the base, a scientist who's, working on, a contraption that might be able to help them. And then on the other hand, you have a person who is on the base for a conference who just happens to be employing Mr. Fixit. And so, these coincidences, of course, end up resulting in the day being saved. And also the fact that the aliens weren't, say, malevolent creatures bent on world conquest for a change. They were just literally kids just having fun, and, well, they forgot to do the responsible thing and, check for life signs. And so, I mean, of course, if you really want to nitpick, though, you can ask, well, if this isn't the first time they've destroyed planets, who's to say that this is the first time that they've forgotten to check for life signs? And so then, if you think about it in that regard, I mean, it takes the sort of cutesy feeling that the story has and adds a bit of a darker spin to it, because they're like, oh yeah, it's a cute story, it's fun, but how do we know that none of the planets that they've destroyed or uninhabited. It just kind of makes you think for a bit. Or I guess maybe it's one of those things where, depending on your mindset or how old you are, like if you were a little kid reading this story, I mean, yeah, it's a fun Hulk story, which it still is regardless. But when you're, say, an adult and you've had enough in the way of, say, real life or real world experience, and seeing how there are consequences for certain actions or just actions in general, you kind of have to wonder about that, or you can't help but wonder about it, at least. But I thought it was a fun standalone story, and Mr. Fixit, or aka Grey Hulk, was written in character. He's very grumpy, and he's very basically in your face when it comes to chewing the aliens out. But in this case, it kind of worked out in his favor, in a sense that these were kids who, yeah, they needed someone to call them out and say, hey, be careful, And so I think I'll go ahead and give this standalone story 4 out of 5 stars. I mean, it did its job well, and it was a genuinely fun story. And also, like I said, I like the artwork that was kind of like a good balance between sort of realistic looking and, cartoonish. So I'll show y'all some of the art real quick. Okay. Here we are. Oh, by the way, the artist was Ron Wilson, who was also the writer of the story, I believe. So this is the aliens and their ship, going around destroying stuff, just having fun. Yeah, cute little green, big-headed aliens. There we go. And there's Grey Hulk, aka Mr. Fixit, being approached and told that, yeah, we have a problem that we might need your help with. And there's the rocket-propelled spring harness. And I like this page, this splash page right here, because you sort of have a sense of like an epic scale, in the sense that, this is a huge asteroid that's being destroyed by one person, but that person is the Hulk, and so, yeah, you're gonna, get some destruction here. But I like this. It's a good, shot. There they are, getting pissed off that their game's being interrupted. And there's a security robot that they summon, and Hulk just makes short work of it. And there he is chewing them out, and they're like, yeah, we're sorry. And they send him back to Earth. So yeah, it was just a fun little story. 4 out of 5 stars, short, simple, but gets the job done. And it's a genuinely amusing, series of coincidences. And, for, the story that it worked. So, yeah, good story. So the next story is Heads I Win, Tails You Lose. Excuse me. So one of the interesting things about this particular story is that it has some very early artwork by Rob Liefeld. And this was right around the time that within this the same issue, he was finishing up his 3-part Wolverine story, The Wilding, which I have only recently reviewed as well. And so within the issues of 51 through 53 of Marvel Comics Presents, you have some early artwork by Rob Liefeld. 51 through 53, you have the 3-part Wolverine story, The Wilding, and then within issue 53 here, you have the standalone Black Widow and Silver Sable story. And I have to say, though, when you see Rob Liefeld, doing some early artwork in his career, it's like night and day, because you look at his early artwork and you can definitely see that you have an artist who is genuinely trying and they're passionate, and you see the energy and enthusiasm being channeled into their work. So whether or not you think his artwork is actually good, you can't deny that the energy and enthusiasm are there. But unfortunately, though, as his time went on and he became, say, struck with overnight success, I think what ended up happening was he kind of lost the incentive to further expand his craft and improve himself as an artist. Like, say, you look at Jim Lee and Eric Larson and Todd McFarlane, artists like that who, were, say, within the same community as Rob Liefeld was. And you see these guys at the start of their careers, and you see how, as time went on, they actually improved as artists. But unfortunately with Rob Liefeld, though, it just seems like, because his style was so distinctive at the time, that when he became a hot success, then, well, it just kind of got to his head. I mean, I'm sure there's more to it than that, but that's the impression one gets if you look at, the artwork he had when he started out versus the artwork he had when he made it, So anyway, the story in question, you have Black Widow and Silver Sable in Paris trying to hunt down the same guy, but for different agencies. And it turns out that the reason Black Widow wants this guy is because several world authorities were wanting this guy brought in, preferably alive, for various crimes. And seven of those agencies hired her to hunt him down and bring him to justice, or to have him stand trial. And Silver Sable, on the other hand, is wanting to pursue him, or is trying to pursue him because he had helped a former Nazi war criminal to escape justice, from the authorities. And there was a shootout wherein a couple of her agents who were trying to capture the guy ended up being killed. And so while he himself didn't kill the agents, they were basically killed because they were in pursuit of him specifically, as well as the Nazi war criminal. And so for Silver Sable, it's personal, whereas for Black Widow, it's just business. And so they both find the guy, but they also end up getting in each other's way because they're both trying to capture him. And so the two of them end up sort of in an obligatory fight scene, which is kind of amusing because while they're fighting each other, they're sort of commenting on how cliche it is that, you've got sort of a misunderstanding fight going on that they kind of are obligated to go through due to certain expectations, which is kind of a break in the fourth wall moment because, excuse me, because a lot of comic book readers know that almost any time, two different characters meet up with one another, there's going to be some kind of fight scene that's based on a misunderstanding. But once they get the obligatory fight scene out of the way and realize that they're not, and they know that they're not really enemies, but they just are in each other's way, they decide, okay, how are we going to sell this? And they're like, okay, coin toss. Heads I win, tails you lose. As in, heads, one of them gets to take the guy to their respective authorities, and tails, the other person basically has to say, hey, I lost the guy. But right before they call it, though, it turns out that a particular gentleman ends up accidentally falling to his death because prior to them fighting one another, they had both used some of their weapons on him. And Black Widow had used this sort of taser-like device, that shot out from her wrists and wrapped him up and kept him contained. And Silver Sable had used these sort of shuriken-like weapons that she has on her that sort of pinned him to a wall. So both, the rope-like weapon that Black Widow had and the shuriken-like weapons that Silver Sable had pinned the guy to the wall. And so while while they're fighting, he's able to, slip out of his constraints, or his restraints. And so but then in the process, though, he accidentally falls to his death. And so at that point they're like, well, I guess it's heads we both win, tails we both lose. And so once they figure, let's see, I'll just go and read it here. We both lose, and we both win. Go figure. What say I flip it again? Heads, we celebrate at Regine's. Tails, we drown our sorrow. We drown our sorrows at L'Alcazor de Paris. I'm sorry, it's French. I don't really know how to pronounce it properly, but yeah. So either way, their target's lost, but either they celebrate or they drown their sorrows in style. So I thought, once again, it's a nice little standalone story, sort of simple, one and done. But for the fact that you have Black Widow and Silver Sable playing well off of each other, and plus sort of the breaking the fourth wall bit about how we're kind of obligated to go through this fight scene but not really kill each other, and then kind of try to work together. I really kind of appreciated that. It's always kind of amusing when you see characters within a story sort of acknowledge the tropes and cliches and what have you. And I also thought it was kind of amusing how the person they were after, he keeps on trying to escape from them even though he's restrained, and they're having to tell him stop moving while they're trying to argue it out with each other as far as which one's going to take him, right? And so the guy's constantly like, no, I'm not trying to escape, even though he's trying to escape, which unfortunately kind of does him in the sense that he slips and falls a billion stories to his death. And so there is some dark humor in that regard, but overall though the humor was pretty lighthearted. And also I thought that the artwork by Rob Liefeld was actually pretty well done, and he actually did a good job in terms of, say, drawing human anatomy, in the sense of drawing two females or two women, which is something that I guess a lot of artists kind of struggled with in say this point in time in the 90s, in the sense of giving proper proportion and everything. But you look at his artwork here and versus his artwork later on, and it's surprisingly well done. And so you could definitely see that there was potential for a legitimately good artist to come out, so to speak. But I guess just in the long run it didn't work out like that. But there was a point in time where it could have happened. So I'll just go ahead and show you some artwork here, like right here. It actually looks pretty good. And there's the guy, the target, running. A Silver Sable going after him. Then you got Black Widow sort of, waiting for him in the shadows there. And that's when Silver Sable and Black Widow both kind of get in each other's way here. And that's where they both use their weapons on him, and they both end up restraining him at the same time. And here we go. A nice, single, page here, but with the two of them fighting each other. And I actually think it's pretty good fight choreography. The way it's illustrated, and you see kind of a step-by-step process. And this is where they're sort of commenting on how annoying and cliche it is that they have to fight each other and then ultimately come to an agreement, So there he is trying to escape again. And then they decide on the coin toss. And there he goes. And there you have the two of them deciding, okay, one more coin toss. Heads we celebrate, tails we drown our sorrows. So, but yeah, all in all though, once again, a nice, simple standalone story that's unconnected from a bunch of stuff, but it's a fun story. And you also have some surprisingly good artwork by Rob Liefeld. And so I'm going to go ahead and give this story 4 out of 5 stars as well. Both of these stories were simple one-and-done stories, but they did their job, and you actually got, a chuckle out of them, and you got to appreciate some good artwork as well. So, yeah, that was my take on them. once again, Marvel Comics Presents, I mean, they had some good standalone stories that the reader could enjoy in one go and sometimes find something special to appreciate about them. And that was the case here. So thank you very much for taking the time to check out my review. You got any questions, comments, please drop a line, let me know. And if you like what you see here, please feel free to like and subscribe. So y'all take care. Bye.